Hello everybody, this is Stephen Howson. This is Full Time Devils. This is the huge midfield debate, and me and these lads are going to talk about who should be playing in Manchester United's midfield, how they should be playing, and any rumours about players that we may or may not have been linked to. Lads, how are we doing?
Decent.
Steve.
Not bad
How
at all.
are you?
I'm all right. Do you know what? I think this might be Greg's first time on a live debate. So I'm going to come to you first, Greg, and I'm going to say, what sort of formation do you think? Because before we know about who's going to be in there, we need to know where they're going to be. So talk to me about the formation you expect from Jose Mourinho's midfield this season.
Well, I think a lot of people get formations wrong, really, because that's, I mean, people talking last season, Pogba has to play in a midfield three. Well, it depends what kind of midfield three it is. I mean, that's not how football works. Formations are what you make them, really. And, I mean, the options are you either get a holding midfielder in to play that deep line role to unleash Pogba and Herrera, or you continue with this 4-2-3-1 and you try and get more fluidity up the pitch so there is a space for Pogba to burst into, which I think was the problem last season sometimes. Not so much the lack of a DM, it was when you had Rooney and Zlatan especially in the same position and Pogba was going, I've got no room to walk into here. This just isn't working for me. So I think the options are open, as we've seen Mourinho throughout his career. I mean, he tends to stick to a 4-2-3-1, but he's not someone that is kind of wedded to a shape for the sake of it. He'll move things around, as we've already seen last season. So I think it's more about attributes than a specific role of what United need in midfield.
I don't agree. I'm going to go to Paul and see what he thinks.
I think that's an interesting point, but I think that ultimately, whether you describe it numerically or as a combination of different kind of footballing archetypes, you're still talking about that you're talking about the same thing using different mechanisms to describe it in a way. I think that we are going to see variations on three formations during the season because it's what we saw last season. There are going to maybe be times where we play three at the back, which we saw towards the end of the season. In fact, earlier in the season, we'd seen Mourinho quite literally play six across the back a number of times. Against Chelsea, he decided to, at Old Trafford, completely abandon the concept of formation and basically play like a 3-3-2 with two roaming players. It was kind of exciting. But yeah, so I think we'll play 3-5-2 some of the time, probably not that much of the time. That'd be my guess. I think his go-to is still going to be 4-2-3-1 unless you sign another top-tier midfielder and he looks to build a midfield three of Pogba, Herrera and another. Because at that point, you can't really call it a 4-2-3-1 because we're not going to be asking Pogba to play number 10, or at least we certainly shouldn't be, given how useful he can be in deeper line positions as well as contributing to those attacks.
I agree to an extent because I think that the 4-3-3 formation was probably where our best football came, and some of our best performances came with Pogba, Herrera and Carrick sitting in behind as making up that three, but Carrick can't play 50 games this season. Dave, how do you see this midfield flowing together this year?
Well, I think I kind of agree with the interchangeability that Paul was talking about, how, you know, United will play a 4-3-3, they'll play a 4-2-3-1, they'll play a number of different systems. What I don't want to see is I don't really want to see a back three. I don't think a back three is competitive when you're really at the top of the game. The likes of, you know, your Real Madrid, your Bayern Munich's in a way. Yes, they played under Pep Guardiola, but they're not going to win the Champions League playing that system. You know, Juve, what they did so well was play a 4-4-2. They moved away from a three at the back. So I kind of want to move away from playing three at the back, but I want to keep that midfield, whether it is, a triangle with a deep line player or an attacking midfielder. I don't think United will play, something like a 4-2-3-1 because they've not gone for someone like Antoine Griezmann. Where it could be evolving is your Inter Milan circa 2010, where Wesley Sneijder played ahead of two defensive midfielders. That could work at United with signings. That Pogba could be the Wesley Sneijder type player, playing a bit deeper. A little bit like how Thiago played for Bayern Munich this season in the Champions League. And arguably, if Bayern Munich hadn't played Real Madrid that early, they would have been finalists. And I think that was the big thing there, that this system that Ancelotti was building with Thiago just roaming everywhere, creating just doing what he wanted to do, and having Vidal and Alonso behind that was so strong defensively. That could be a way where United go. But also as well, I'd like to see a diamond in midfield. I think the diamond is coming back. We saw Zidane use it in the Champions League to great effect against Atletico, against Juve. We've seen the re-emergence of the 4-4-2 in the Premier League. A 4-4-2 diamond massively counteracts that through the middle. You can see Pogba, who's played in that system before, played very well as a left central midfielder. You could throw someone like Mkhitaryan as a 10, or even throw anyone into that position, a Martial, a Rashford. So I think with United, it's going to be about great flexibility and fluidity, but I want to stick with a back four, not a back three.
I'm going to come to the comments in a second, but before I come to the comments, Dave, I'm just going to throw this one back at you. You mentioned you didn't really feel the 3-5-2. The signings that was rumoured to be happening, like Griezmann, I think that was as well as what we was going to get in Lukaku. And I don't think we're going to play a 4-3-3 with Griezmann just hanging out on the right. And I think that a two-striker system, the only way you can get that and make it all work is with a three at the back. Do you not think that this is a sort of system that you've seen from Jose Mourinho, albeit not very often? Conte used it quite effectively with Italy in 2016. Do you not think that the squad that we've got would suit a three at the back with two up front?
I think if you play three defenders, you take out an attacker. I think that's how it goes. You take out an attacker or you take out a midfielder. And I'd rather have an attacker or a midfielder in my team. If you play a 3-5-2 and your strikers don't split and they don't go wide, you're very basic in that final third. It is all about getting the wing backs forward. It is all about getting crosses into the box, which was a little bit what United were doing last season. So to evolve United's attacking play, they need a few more attackers. And if they went back to a three at the back system, I think unfortunately that would happen. But if we are talking about that midfield base, you could play a three-man midfield in a 3-5-2 is very good. Your deep line player who United would have to bring in that player to cover that position because Carrick isn't going to be playing every single game this season. So signings would have to be made of the 3-5-2, but it works for the forwards. It works for Rashford, who's very capable at drifting wide, Martial and Lukaku. Some of the best stuff Lukaku does, if you watch him, is in the channels. It's when he's been played through. It's when he's got his head up with the ball at his feet. Not quite a target man, more of a poacher that likes to drift wide. So it does actually suit Lukaku's strength, Rashford's strength, but I just don't think a 3-5-2 is where United should go.
One of the things that is a bit of a problem for either a diamond or a 3-5-2 is fullbacks. Because we have Valencia on the right, but if you play a diamond, then obviously your fullbacks are your primary creators of width. And like the right-hand side is not a problem at the moment. If and I still think it's a reasonably sized if Valencia hits the same kind of form he hit last season, because we have seen him hit peaks and then decline really quickly as something happens and his confidence shifts, whatever. I'm not saying I think that'll happen, but it is a possibility. So we can assume that's kind of half sorted on the right. On the left, though, it's a massive question because obviously we all look at that and go, well, that's made for Luke Shaw. But first of all, there's the relationship between Mourinho and Shaw. But secondly, from a tactical perspective, one of the things Mourinho did over and over again last season was one goes, one stays. You don't see both fullbacks going at the same time. And if that happens, inherently, if you play a 3-5-2 or a diamond, you get this kind of really lopsided effect because you're not getting width support on both sides at once.
With a three at the back and a holding midfielder, though, do you really need one to stay and one to go, or can you allow both to go? I mean, Damian did play for Conte's Italy on the left-hand side in a 3-5-2, so it can be done.
But it's Jose Mourinho we're talking about. It's not whether the formation can work with two going. It's just that Mourinho's entire career really has been one goes, one stays.
And I mean, we're going to get onto it a bit later on.
We'll let you speak, Greg.
Yeah, cheers, mate. I'm not convinced by any of the midfielders we've been linked to that could be like this Carrick replacement, which is why I said like maybe 4-2-3-1 without this DM is the way to go, because I mean we're going to get onto it later, but I'm just not convinced by any of the names that have been linked to really.
All right, let's go to the comments and see what we're saying. Dice Roller says 4-3-3. Jordan Coombs says no three at the back, please. And Raw United says, who is he? I'm assuming we're talking about Dave. Dave is a widge, but he's on here quite regularly. He should know who he is by now. Right, okay, let's go to the next thing that we're going to talk about, the current squad. So there's a lot of midfielders in there at the moment, and we've kind of glossed over everyone apart from Herrera and Pogba, haven't we? So I'm just going to read out everybody that we've got. So we've got Pogba, McTominay, Herrera, Fellaini, Carrick, Fosu Mensah, if Mourinho decides he wants to play him there. Are any of those lads, apart from the two we mentioned, likely to step up and make this their own? Widge. David.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, man. I think Marouane Fellaini deserves a bit more respect than you're giving him. I think that he does a very, very good job when he plays as a number 10. He's this destructive role we saw in the Europa League that he dominated defences. And that's the Marouane Fellaini that United signed. They played him deeper where he's not really suited. United will still use Marouane Fellaini as a number 10 against certain teams. You think of the latter stage of the Champions League that United need to be progressing to get to where they need to be in European football. You're thinking about Marouane Fellaini up against someone like Verratti deep in midfield. There's a tactical mismatch there. And yes, it's not pretty. Yes, it's not beautiful passing football. But a long ball out the back to Marouane Fellaini is very, very effective. We saw it against Ajax in the Europa League final in the semi against Celta Vigo, that it was an effective tactic at the top level. And that's exactly what United could do with Marouane Fellaini. Don't use him every week. Don't use him in a deeper position. But when the opportunity comes to play him as an attacking midfielder, as a sort of false target man, just hit the ball to him, why not play that style? Get the ball higher up, get it to the likes of Lukaku, Rashford, Martial, Mkhitaryan a lot quicker. And that isn't a bad thing there. So I think that, yeah, Marouane Fellaini isn't the best player I've ever seen play football, but it will do a job. And I think he still has a role in this United squad. He's not getting sold 100%.
I'm just going to reply to what you just said, but I'm going to move it on to Greg. So you've just said that Fellaini can step up, but what we're asking is, can any one of these step up and be the first choice player? You've just said Fellaini can step up and do a job when required, when tactics dictate, and I agree, he was fantastic tactically against Ajax, and I understand that there's a space in the squad for him for that. But Greg, is there anyone in this squad that can step up and be a first choice? Don't you dare drop me in this squad.
He's already done it. It's Ander Herrera, isn't it? I mean, I do think, looking at what Mourinho did, he did go to this midfield three quite reluctantly at times, it seemed, last season. So I think the question for me is, there's no one in the squad at the moment apart from Carrick, who we've already agreed can't play week in, week out. And there's nobody else in that squad that I can see that can come in and complete or complement what Herrera and Pogba have got. They're the two out-and-out first-choice midfielders you're going to start week in, week out as often as you can. I don't see anybody else in that list that could come in and have that same kind of permanence in the team. It's just not there. Carrick is great, as like Fellaini, as Dave said. Carrick's great to bring in for certain jobs when you want a bit more control in midfield. But interestingly, there's one name that was on that list that Mourinho did use in a defensive midfield position last season, okay, for one game. But Tuanzebe. We saw Mourinho at Real Madrid use players like Pepe in midfield as like a kind of a forward line centre-back to take on guys like Lionel Messi on man-marking jobs. We've seen Sir Alex Ferguson use Phil Jones in a similar job in games as well. So Axel Tuanzebe, fantastically talented young centre-back. Maybe he could be pushed forward by Mourinho, again, to do a certain job in certain games.
Paul, what do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Steve, that is the kind of moment to moment. Certain games you could play Fellaini at 10. You can play Tuanzebe as one of those free floating players I was talking about when referencing the Chelsea game. I mean, Tuanzebe played as a man marker to mixed effect. He was brilliant against Alexis, against Arsenal. He was terrible against Christian Eriksen against Spurs, because Eriksen was just smarter than Sanchez about it and dragged him all over the pitch. But, he's a young player. And in fact, that brings me to my key point, which is the only reasonable answer to the question, can one of these players step up, is we don't know. Because we just haven't seen enough of them, and we haven't seen enough, at the top level. We haven't seen Timothy Fosu-Mensah play defensive midfield often enough. We haven't seen McTominay, who does have some certain kind of Carrick-esque characteristics, but we haven't seen him often enough. I mean, he did that job brilliantly against Crystal Palace in a dead rubber at Old Trafford. That doesn't necessarily mean he can do it on the main stage the whole time. And of course, this is Mourinho. So it seems to me like it's reasonable to suggest it's unlikely Mourinho's going to go, right, I'm going to gamble on Timothy Fosu-Mensah being the third member of this midfield, even though he has played him in midfield for the kind of 6 minutes worth of cameos he gave him last season.
I would love it to be Fosu-Mensah. I think everybody knows I would love it to be Fosu-Mensah. But let's face it, we are dealing with Mourinho, and for him to just throw in a teenager that isn't already an international is extremely unlikely, isn't it? Right, so let's go to a quick 30-second ad break, which some of you may see. Absolutely lovely. Right, that's the ad break out of the way. Let's have a look at the rumours then. So there's been a lot of rumours, obviously. This is Manchester United and it is a transfer window. So, of course, we've been linked to everyone who's ever likely to or has kicked a ball ever in their life, especially if they're a midfielder. There's been some names. I'm going to read a couple of names that have been linked to. Fabinho, Matic, Bakayoko, who seems all but sealed now for Chelsea, Nainggolan, Dyer. I'm going to come to you first, David. I'm going to say, is there any other players on this list that you think could come in and do the job that we've just been talking about and be that first choice central defensive midfielder?
I think the first one that I'd go with, obviously, is Fabinho. I speak about him every single week when he's linked to United. I think he's the perfect guy for the job. I think he's up there with the best defensive midfielders in world football right now. His age, his ability to cover the flanks. I just love that he's got a great overall game. He's not just he's not just a tackler. He's not just going to play the simple passes. He's a mixture of everything. And he's tenacious and he's aggressive and could cover a number of positions, not just in defensive midfield. I think that's key for Mourinho as well. He could arguably play centre half, could play right back. I imagine he could do a job job at left back. So he's got a great ability to cover, but he has the game intelligence. That was the thing that, if you go back to the Champions League where City were dumped out by Monaco, the 5-3 at the Etihad, Fabinho in that game just showed such great intelligence for both goals. The first one, breaking out of the press, nicking the ball, whipping the ball into the back post, and Falcao doing the rest. But it was that intelligence to know that in defensive midfield sometimes you have to go ahead, you have to put that pressure in. Something United didn't do enough last season was force these ball-playing sides, the likes of Manchester City, to go long out of the back. Force Willy Caballero to go long, and that's something that Fabinho could bring. You look at the second goal that they scored as well, a quick free kick. It's that game intelligence that I'd like to see at Manchester United, but as well the tenacity that he showed against English opposition in the Champions League before. So for me, Fabinho is the number one guy 100% of the time. If you're going to pick, any guys of those lists that you just mentioned there.
I think we're lacking a little bit of organisers, aren't we, in the team? There's not really many people that will move everyone around. None of the centre-halves, I don't think, really seem like that. Before I come to you in a second, Paul, I'm just going to say to you guys, get your comments in and don't just tell me who, tell me why. Tell me why you think Fabinho, tell me why you think Nainggolan. Give me a really good comment and I'll read the comments out. So, Paul, any of them lot really taking your fancy?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree with Dave. The only thing that I would say is, you said it would appeal to Mourinho that he's a kind of multifunctionalist. But one thing that was really interesting about the transition to Mourinho and what we've seen with some of the transfer outgoings, Mourinho went in, I think maybe even his very first press conference at United, said, I don't like multifunctional players, I like specialists, which is like stood him in complete contradiction to Van Gaal, who multifunctional strikers is exactly what he was after. And our squad was kind of built around multifunctional, total football-ish kind of concept. And then Mourinho comes in and goes, no, I want people that can do an exact job in an exact place. But I do think that Fabinho's performances, particularly in the Champions League, show that whether or not he can also play at wing-back, he's good enough as a midfielder to do the job. This isn't like a cry from the heart, but this is like straight from the head. I've seen loads of United fans absolutely freaking out about the idea that we might sign Eric Dyer. Now, I'm not saying I think we will sign Eric Dyer, because it seems to me that would be a very difficult, challenging deal to do, and you'd be paying way over any reasonable market price. But if Eric Dyer is an effective water carrier, if that's what he is, and I don't think we quite know what his ceiling is yet, but if he is an effective water carrier and Mourinho decides, actually, I want to build a structured 4-3-3 with a water carrier, a box-to-box midfielder with a kind of defensive mindset, and a box-to-box midfielder with the incredible skill set of Paul Pogba, then to me, I would be relatively content with Dyer or Matic, so long as that's what he's bringing them in to do. But of course, neither of those are transfers that get the pulses racing.
I think what people are a little bit miffed at as well is, and I reckon it's probably in people's memory to a certain extent, is that England have just played France and Pogba absolutely took the piss out of Dyer. And those highlights are probably replaying in people's heads going, that's our defensive midfielder.
But
I think that's a false picture of Dyer, to be honest, but I think that's what's in people's heads.
It's kind of ridiculous because it is the kind of YouTube... Hello, we're on YouTube. But it's the kind of YouTube culture where actually Dyer's had one really excellent season from Spurs and then a season where he's kind of... Well, I was going to say the season before last we could categorise as excellent, and then this last season did a fine job. It changed when Wanyama came in and all that kind of stuff. But, so, yeah, that's I think we underestimate pragmatism because the squad is full of incredible talent. And actually, it's this kind of the old Galacticos thing. I think, Greg, you might have written about that in your article on Nainggolan, but it's that Galacticos thing that we don't need another superstar signing. We've got enough superstars. Exactly.
I think something that a lot of people flipped out about as well was Matic. And for me, Matic, if Mourinho wanted him, I was happy with Matic because Mourinho's just been at United for 12 months. And if he goes, do you know what I need? I need that I've just had for 2 years. And when you sign a player from overseas, you can scout him, you can ask people about him, you can play with him on FIFA. But unless you've worked with him and you've worked with him in a dressing room like Mourinho has for 2 years, he's going to intimately know exactly what he can tell Matic and what he delivers on the pitch. For me, there's no risk. in that. So if Mourinho thinks that he wants Matic and he knows what Matic has got and Matic is the player that he wants, then let's go full steam ahead and get Matic because he knows the guy, rather than some guy that you've scouted and it's a third-party opinion and you don't know what he's like, you don't know how he receives instructions and all that sort of stuff. Greg, talk us about this Nainggolan article that you did then.
Well, Nainggolan was fantastic last season for Roma, but he basically plays like a hard-working number 10, and he's never played as a holding midfielder, really, not at the highest level for Belgium or Roma or Cagliari or any of the teams he's played for. So the article is basically saying if United are going to sign a replacement to Michael Carrick, he is not the man. He is basically... He would be getting another player getting in the way of Pogba, getting in the way of Ander Herrera, which, I mean, kind of brings us to Matic as well. Because, I mean, I agree with you. If Mourinho trusts the man and he's won things with him, that's fantastic. But for me, it all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to get this third midfielder to complete a midfield three, Matic ain't it. But if you're looking to get a guy to do a job next to Pogba like Matic did next to Fabregas under Mourinho, he's the guy. But then you have to question, where does Herrera fit into this? So Matic, to me, seemed like a signing with the idea of a midfield two in mind. You look at Bakayoko, I also don't see how he fits in as this third defensive midfielder, because when he was playing with Fabinho at Monaco, it was Fabinho who sat back and let Bakayoko get at the other team. Fabinho was the guy with the positional discipline who kind of read the game, organised things, as you guys have said. He had the intelligence, very complete football as well. He wasn't caught with the ball at his feet. He could do anything you want him to do. Dyer, I'd probably say similar role to Fabinho, but probably not as good a footballer. But Fabinho's probably off to Atletico Madrid. We're not going to get Dyer. So none of those players on the list seem to be the answer from where I'm sitting anyway. But
I'm going to come to you guys in a second and ask you for your wild cards. But before I do, I'm just going to read the comments. So we've got off Zed Jamie, Nainggolan is the closest to Roy Keane. I disagree. Ewan Lade says, Dyer, proven holding midfielder in the Premier League. Only issue is the price. Think he's got the same characteristics as Carrick. He can also play centre-half, which I think might stack up more to the three at the back and a flat three midfield, because I think, whatever. Stefan Reyes says, Blind was Dutch Player of the Year when playing as a midfielder. Why not try him again for the Carrick role and give him a run of games? I'm not picking a teammate. I agree. I would love to see Blind played in that midfield. Very intelligent footballer. But it's Mourinho that we're talking about, isn't it? So he's going to try and find someone at 6'3" that benches 150 kg and runs 100 metres in 10 seconds. That's what he's looking for. He likes a team of absolute monsters. And Blind
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting though that we've had this entire conversation and none of us have mentioned Daley Blind, because it is that it's almost like we should have said at the beginning of the conversation, oh yeah, obviously Daley Blind, it was a potential answer here, but it's abundantly clear Mourinho doesn't think that. Yeah. And that's almost like a kind of precursor to this conversation, because it could, especially against weaker teams, it could work excellently. I mean, I think there are significant limitations to Blind being an absolutely elite level holding midfielder, but at the most of the Premier League level, it'd be absolutely fine.
I mean, a lot of people. I wrote an article saying like the 10 midfielders United should sign, but one of the players that somebody put it out on Twitter was, why don't you get Julian Weigl? But Mourinho is never going to work with Julian Weigl because he's exactly the wrong kind of defensive midfielder for what he wants to do.
Yeah, he's another guy that looks like he's never walked past the gym in his life. And I think that's the antithesis of what Mourinho wants. He wants someone that's going to physically impose themselves on a game. I think that's probably one of the reasons he loved Marouane Fellaini. The last comment that we've got is from Aaron Fitzgerald. Matic is the best at what he does. Mourinho is... Not sure what the last comment's all about. Right, anyway, but as I said, I'm going to come to you for the wild card. I'm going to come to you, Paul, first. Wild card, someone we haven't mentioned that could fit the bill and make our midfield mint again.
Could you come to me last? Because these two boys know way more about this stuff than me. I spend all my time watching Manchester United. These are professional football watchers, these guys. No, I mean, I think when you really, really talk about wild card, I would pick Luka Modric, which is, I mean, that is as wild as the cards get, because that is not a transfer with any, like, how would that work? Imagine. But I think that it would be absolutely beautiful. And I guess for a wild card, rather than a player, what I would bring is the idea of a midfield where actually you could bring another more attack-minded midfielder in and make Herrera the holder in the three. Now, that loses something of Herrera's game, but we saw last season Herrera was just the holder all the way through that season. Me and Dave were on a debate in, I think, August last season about who should play alongside Pogba in the two. They've suggested it should be Fellaini.
Was I right? Yes, I was. You're right. Final.
But in the end, that debate, Mourinho didn't care for that. He was just like, no, it's Herrera. Herrera's the guy. So I think that you could maybe bring in a more box-to-box player, a kind of Nainggolan-esque character, and play Herrera holding Nainggolan and Pogba ahead of him. So, I mean, I'm not sure that's the best use of resources, but I think it's a reasonable wild card.
Okay, so a non-answer from Paul.
I said Nainggolan. In the end, I said Nainggolan.
Greg.
Oh, well, if you want to go down the Eric Dyer route, why don't you get a world-class version of Eric Dyer? And
Pretty
get
sure
Javi
I said
Martinez
someone that
from,
we've not mentioned for both of you.
Oh, no, I was just saying Javi Martinez from Bayern Munich, the world-class version of Eric Dyer, if you will have me. But then if you want someone who's got a bit more going forward, then maybe Steven Nzonzi from Sevilla. I'd say those two, they've got the physical attributes. They're both very intelligent footballers, great with the ball at the feet, great at blocking off space. Born holding midfielders, in my book.
Dave.
And then Nzonzi's an England legend.
Exactly. Sam Allardyce
Dave's definitely
exactly
picking
what's going
from
on.
someone from Bundesliga here, isn't he?
No, I think the Bundesliga one would be Weigl, obviously, that just wouldn't fit Mourinho's United. Weigl is such a brilliant footballer. You know, Toni Kroos citing him as his replacement in years to come. And he is a brilliant player, so good at switching the play, moving things around, but he's just not Mourinho. Similar with someone like Jorginho from Napoli, another cracking central midfielder, arguably probably Carrick's, replacement down to a T in terms of how he plays, how he can control the game. He's quite tall, but it is his passing where he can move the ball around, almost slightly Busquets-like as well in how he reads the play. A fantastic player, but again, Mourinho won't be picking someone like that. You're more likely Mourinho to sign a Wanyama than sign someone like Julian Weigl or sign someone like Jorginho. But the guy that I'd like to see United bring in, obviously, is William Carvalho. He just has it all to hold Man United's midfield on his own. I think that's the thing that you've got to think about when United do go forward, whether it is with Pogba next to Carvalho or Carvalho holding behind Herrera and Pogba. He's going to have to hold midfielder on his own. Something that City need as well is a real powerful defensive midfielder, and it looks like City are the more likely destination for Carvalho. Yes, he had his leg broken 2 seasons ago, but his form has been fantastic. He's so good with the ball at his feet, brilliant at opening up games, opening up the pitch. Something that I don't think some of these pure holders have is that ability to hit that flat long pass. Something that United miss when Pogba's not in the team. When we saw midfields of Herrera and Michael Carrick, at the back end of the season, the Swansea game aside, it was so boring, so one way to, side to side, so Louis van Gaal-esque. And I think we need someone that's got a little bit more vision in defensive midfield, but also got that power. And that's why Carvalho is the perfect guy. But again, I don't think Mourinho's going to get someone like Carvalho in.
All right, great. Cheers for that, Dave. Right, so it's decision time, and our sensible, unbiased presenter is going to choose a winner from all this lot. And I guess I should really go with some of the wildcard ones. Or maybe I should, because you didn't really give me an answer from the squad. And we didn't really get a consensus on anybody that we've been linked to. So I'm going to just go for the pure romantic route and say Timothy Fosu-Mensah should be given that opportunity to sink or swim. And he's on the tour. Let's have it right now. Because football's about bringing players for your own academy, innit? And I love that guy. And you can shake your head. And all the comments people are just absolutely mashing the keyboard with their elbows.
Hates you.
It's the framework of the debate that I have a problem with, not the ultimate conclusion. I'm perfectly happy with the ultimate conclusion. In fact, I'm all for it. Let's go Fosu-Mensah. Let's go Fosu-Mensah.
Yeah, I think Fosu-Mensah could. And if he'd have bought him, he would have been the sort of player that Jose Mourinho would love.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's already been there and he's free, he's probably completely overlooking him. It's unrealistic, but football's unrealistic because we start every season thinking we're going to win everything, and it never happens, or very rarely happens. Happened once. So I think that's the conclusion. We want to see Fosu-Mensah bring in more youth. Happy days. So thank you to you guys watching at home. Get your comments in. Who do you think should be the third wheel in midfield? Or you'd be like, listen, let's play 2 and just absolutely go for it. Play Marshall, play Rashford, play Lukaku. Let's have a party. So get your suggestions, get your comments in below. Thank you to these guys. Go give them a follow on Twitter. Go follow them on YouTube as well, because Dave and Squawka Greg are also on YouTube with their own little podcast type things. And check out Paul's podcast on iTunes too. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you very soon.